So this week, I'm delving into something more original. I've started really enjoying these crossovers, but one part of them that's actually kind of boring is simply sticking a character into an outfit from some other story, and then finding some loosely tied justification for it. So going forward, I want to do some more unique designs to try and show our characters as they would exist in that world, like I did with JoJo, while trying to still remain topical. This time, it's about the most well-known civil rights comic to ever spring to the mind of the late, great Stan the Man Lee. Fun fact, we were initially part of a writers guild through our initial publisher, Excalibur. Part of what that guild did for aspiring writers was help them make connections to more experienced writers. There were AMAs with well-published people, and one of those ones that we actually got the privilege of speaking over forums to was Stan Lee of Marvel Comics. He gave us some great advice that helped us resolve a couple of really bad plot holes in earlier drafts, mostly around the concepts of time travel and reincarnation, as well as how and when to use flashbacks. This is actually a technique that a lot of current mangaka also picked up from Marvel Comics. According to Stan Lee, flashbacks are best used to explain the introspection of a character that is currently the focus of the narrative. For instance, if the narrative is following Blair, and you want to show her introspective feelings about something that happened with Pat, just do a flashback to that. He also used them a lot to drum up support or emotion for a character that loses their plot armor, and is most useful when done by showing regret from those suffering from the loss. Really, it was a great opportunity. We were unfortunately not a part of that guild anymore due to some problems with the publisher, but you can always look for our second published book on the Barnes & Noble's website. There even exists a review that was written by the amazing Stan Lee. It sounds like him, or maybe somebody hired by him. Either way, it was a motivating experience wherever it came from, the sort of thing that inspired us to go with a more comic book direction. So I'm designing an all-new X team today, and I decided to go with a trio that I really think deserves more screen time. Blair, Pat, and Tam. First thing I want to do going into this project is link these three to an actual canon mutant facility in Scotland. So we're going with the Muir Island facility. Muir Island is a small island off the northern coast of Scotland. Muir Island's significance stems from the fact that it was home to the Earth's largest and most comprehensive mutant research complex, the Mutant Research Center, founded by Dr. Moira McTaggart. McTaggart originally created this facility on a remote island off the northern coast of Scotland to help her son Kevin. Kevin McTaggart, also known as Proteus, is a powerful mutant with reality warping powers. It is also the home to Team Excalibur, a group of mutants that oppose the vehemently anti-mutant sentiment in the UK. Gosh, you don't say? The UK is anti-mutant, so obviously mutants in Glasgow would be of special interest to Moira and her research. And it makes sense that in order to protect Pat, Tam and Blair would travel north with him to join Team Excalibur and help the cause, carrying on Xavier's work and helping McTaggart in her mutant research. What would their powers be? I've got some ideas. So let's start with Blair, because that's just the one I wanted to color first. Now, as I was coming up with these ideas for the suits, I wanted to think of what each one of these characters really represented in life and what those abilities or fascinations would look like if they were awakened the X gene around those concepts. Initially with this design, I wanted to do a mask and cowl, but it just didn't work out in the end. So I'm going to do a specific Celtic war paint based on the goddess of war, wisdom, and fate, the Morrigan. Blair is a very free spirit that is hard to pin down, with a fierce attitude to strong desire for adventure. Once she unlocked her mutant powers at a young age, she would find the ability to manipulate chaos, warping chances in reality with a chaotic purple-black glow, shadowy in appearance. She could use her abilities to manipulate chance, increasing damage from attacks, or tank more damage than would seem possible. Playing games or sports with Blair would become arduous, or you'd have to get her to agree not to use her powers in order to make things fair. However, there's one thing about the Morrigan likes to win and will do so by any means necessary. So probably in games, but especially in battle, Blair as the Morrigan is a character that would push her absolute limits in order to always come out on top. Her suit highlights a sleek body design and dark designs. Deep green and black and silver are all colors associated with the Queen of Shadows, and Blair would use this to her advantage as an infiltrator combatant, something along the lines of Black Widow. Because of the Morrigan's connection to crows and shape-changing ability, I'm inclined to give these to Blair as well within the realm of reality-shaping capabilities that fall within the manipulations of chaos. And since their powers are so similar, Blair's inclusion with the Muir Island Research Facility will be a great asset to Moira's research in helping her son. Next, we have Tam, and I had to think of some aspects to him to get a proper conclusion. and I actually had Pat's identity figured out first. For Tam's inclusion, I had to think of him as a baker that's grounded and earth-based. Keeping with the Tuatha theme of Pat and Blair's identities, I decided to go with the Dagda. Dagda is the father god in Celtic mythos and the leader of the Tuatha De Danann. He's the husband of the Morgan, which might come across as a little sus between he and Blair, but that's really just to make the trio connect properly. Tam and the Dagda are both large-sized, bearded men with wily hair and a pleasant and kind disposition. Though it's also said the Dagda could slay 9 men with a single strike from his club, but also bring them back with the opposite end. He always carries a cauldron that is full of food and is said to be of immense size. But how do I translate that into mutant powers? Well, the first thing I went with was size. Tam McNamara, as codenamed Dagda, has size manipulation as part of his ability set. This is why his suit is baggy and loose. It gives him room to expand and can even be stretched well past these limits if he removes his inhibiting armor plates. He has inhuman strength and unwavering resolve. Kindness radiates from him that can make allies who are distressed more calm and rational, which makes him an important aspect around Pat. Tam would also discover his powers during adolescence, as many people do. What would have initially been thought as a simple growth spurt turned into him filling up his bedroom from floor to ceiling. Xavier would arrive to help Tam understand that his emotions cause his size to spike, and as long as he could keep calm, he could control his size at will. Thankful to Xavier, Tam would join Blair in the Muir Island facility to help understand his mutant powers and put them to good use. As a member of Team Excalibur, Tam is still a baker and often makes treats for his allies. Any dough kneaded by his hands also has the added benefit of containing a small healing buff once it's been fully baked. In a pinch, Tam can pass his healing power on to a teammate through touch, but at the expense of his own life force. One day he might learn to control this better. Also, the Dagda is said to wear either a deep purple or green cloak, and is most closely associated with the metal iron. I've incorporated all of that into the costume design with a deep purple suit and a green cloak that I'm gonna go ahead and also do a tartan color under the clan name McNamara. I'll try to get as close as I can, but any Scots I piss off with this, feel free to roast me in the comments. Who next but Pat? Now, like I said, I had this one figured out before Tam, and this helped me create the trio. Even though Pat and Tam aren't related, Pat uses the code name Lug. Lug is a member of the Tuatha and the Dagda's brother. He's often referred to as the master of all trades. And although he's associated with the sun, he's not a god of light. He's a god of crafts, technology, and skill. Instead, think of Lug more like the light of innovation. Obviously, Pat would awaken his mutant powers while working with his father in his shop. It's easy to say there could still be a blacksmith, even in a more modern setting, but even something like a mechanic's shop would also work, just somewhere Pat is around machines. Pat's powers would have first manifested in suddenly having an innate understanding of not only how something works, but how it could improve to an extent. That might not immediately sound like a really awesome power, but think of it this way. He gets innate knowledge of how to increase a computer's memory, or make an engine run smoother. He could use this to find broken or buggy aspects of a machine or software, and then know just how to fix it. Pat would even be the one who made all their suits, including his own, with colors that are important to Lug as a god. White, red, yellow, gold, Anyway, the white parts of Pat's suit light up in a brilliant flash to disorient foes, or even just provide a useful light source. Perhaps going so far as to weaponize concentrated light into short bursts for attacks? Who knows? Some X-Men powers feel like soft magic system when you really think about it. What about their relationship? There is a reason why I based their poses on this picture of Jean Grey, Wolverine, and Cyclops. I wanted to convey the same sort of relationship dynamic. I mean, look at the X Institute and check out how Jean's room is connected to both Logan and Scott's. And is it canonized somewhere that they're actually a polyamorous throuple? Some iterations of Wolverine have been gay or at least bisexual, as it's claimed he even had a romantic relationship with none other than Hercules. And it's no secret by now that Pat's feelings are currently torn between Tam and Blair. So in a more modernistic take, I'd like to imagine the three of them get the relationship they deserved. And I probably can't get away without mentioning the obvious double whammy that Pat would be facing as a trans-masked mutant. Trans men are often completely overlooked when it comes to discourse around the LGBTQ+ community, but there are startling statistics to show trans men are, in many ways, more prone to be victims of violence than even trans women. Their voices are often overlooked, infantilized, and dismissed, just like cis women, which is incredibly transphobic, but also turn around and they also face the most amount of victim blaming when they speak out about the unfair treatment, transmisandry, and physical and even sexual abuse. Instead, they just get told to man up, even by other queer folk, and It's disgusting. We all need to do better to listen to queer voices, especially now, with extra care taken to those in our community that are regularly silenced. So I find it incredibly logical to point out how protective both Blair and Tam would be over Pat in this sort of modern world. So up next, I wanted to look at what their mutant classification could possibly be. Mutant classification, or bimutative classification, is a term used in Marvel canon to sort of figure out a tier list or power level of various mutants. These are arranged in several categories, although certain versions of Earth don't even use these classifications at all, or only classify Omega level mutants when they become a threat. So working on that list, let's start with the Omega class. An Omega level mutant is one with the most powerful genetic potential of their mutant abilities. Some abilities depicted by mutants described as Omega level include immortality, extreme manipulation of matter and energy, high psionic ability, strong telekinesis, and the potential to exist beyond the boundaries of the known physical universe. No firm definition has been officially offered by the comics, but mutants that have been confirmed as Omega level include Jean Grey, Vulcan, Iceman, Legion, Elixir, and Franklin Richards. These mutants are among the rarest of all mutants. And next we have the Alpha class. The Alpha class mutants are the most powerful and most feared mutants. Alpha mutants have extremely powerful mutant traits without significant flaws. Less than 10% of mutants are Alpha mutants, so they are very rare. But some Alpha mutants include Cyclops, Gambit, Professor X, Havoc, Colossus, and Emma Frost, just to give you an idea. Right after Alpha is Beta, and if I'm starting to sound like some chud podcast, I very much apologize. Maybe we can start using mutant classification instead of gender in the future. As far as how potent their powers are, Beta mutants are on the same level as Alpha mutants. The difference between Beta mutants and Alpha mutants is that Beta mutants have flaws, albeit very small flaws. The Beta mutants are also believed to be about 10% of the mutant population. Some examples of Beta mutants are Beast, Angel, Wolverine, Mystique, and Sabretooth. So these flaws could be something simple, like not being able to blend in well with human society, given that Mystique is a shapeshifter, but she shouldn't have to. Going down a bit further is the Gamma class. No, this does not include Hulk, unless you would classify Hulk as a mutant. Gamma mutants have very powerful mutant abilities, but the flaws they have are more obvious. Unlike Beta mutants, a Gamma mutant's flaw is a major flaw that makes their life very hard. The best example was probably Rogue. Rogue could absorb anybody's life force and copy extremely potent powers. In fact, she actually stole She-Hulk's power at one point in Avengers vs. X-Men, which makes her very powerful, but the caveat used to be that she couldn't touch people, making any kind of romantic life difficult. When Rogue learned how to gain control of this power, her classification moved to Alpha. Also, while Alpha and Beta mutants can pass as regular-looking humans, Gamma mutants cannot because they have physical defects like the Blob or Marrow or Nightcrawler. Delta class. Delta mutants are like Alpha mutants in that they don't have any significant flaws. The only problem is that Delta mutants don't have powers that match an Alpha mutant or even a Beta or Gamma mutant. At least 50% of mutants are Delta mutants, making them the most common type of mutant. Some examples of Delta mutants are Forge, Domino, and Callisto. Yeah, because luck isn't a superpower. Anyway, Forge is initially who I was thinking of when I was first inspired to do this piece. And then a side note, watching a Technomancer work is really the most astounding thing to witness, especially when she's the best one who's ever lived. The last is the Epsilon class. If you think you figured out how this is going to go, stop right now and like this video. So the Epsilon mutants are like Gamma mutants in that they have a major flaw that makes their lives very difficult. So see, we have a downscaling of powers along with what the mutant ability tends to represent for them physically. Epsilon mutants are like Delta mutants in that they have no significant powers to speak of. And approximately 20% of mutants are Epsilon class, making them the second most common type of mutant. An example of an Epsilon class mutant is Beak. And if you don't know who Beak is, don't feel bad. I had no clue until making this list. TLDR, Beak, or Barnell Bohusk, was a student of Hank McCoy's in the Xavier Institute. He was also good friends and later got married to Angel Salvador, or Tempest. His powers are having bird bones, including a beak, feathers, and the ability to fly, but only for short distances with considerable effort. Oh, also, he can apparently see really well. So, where would I put these three into the classification? I think Morgan, with her probability warping control over conflict, would most definitely fit in the Alpha classification. Possibly even Omega if she got a little more creative with her powers. Dagda, I think, would be either Alpha or Beta, considering that his powers are directly tied to emotional control. Having a minor flaw like emotional dysregulation in times of stress or trauma could cause his powers to malfunction. This could, of course, be overcome with effort. But Lug? I think Lug fits very comfortably in the Delta Mutant classification. His powers are nearly identical to Forge, who's also in that class. Perhaps with enough tech and enough time, Lug could increase his skill set to the level of even a potential beta class. But the significant disadvantage of having to rely on tech or armor that he himself creates would keep him from ever attaining an alpha class rank. I should probably throw in a quick mention because the Dagda, Morgan, and Lug all already exist within Marvel canon. The Dagda is also known as Yokaz Alkhair and appears in Thor's comics as well as Savage Tales. His wife is the Morgan, just like in myth. However, one thing differs in Marvel compared to mythology, and that is, just like Loki, Lug is actually seen as being one of the Dagda's children instead of his brother. Seeing as how Marvel franchises often overlap, it could be likely that these three would even meet the gods their codenames were inspired by. Wouldn't that be interesting? Hey, have any of you ever met a god? I have. So what do you think of this? If you've gotten this far, why not subscribe? It helps us greatly in the algorithm of YouTube, exposing our story and our community to more and more people. If you don't want to miss next week's video, please ring my bell, and if you haven't, please tell YouTube you liked this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Art for this week was by Coco on Fiverr. They just got done with our Deadpool project, so obviously I thought, well, why not more superheroes? No one's tired of superheroes yet, right? I'm putting a link to their business down in the description so you can commission them for yourself. If you're tired of me making Coco draw superheroes, toss her some coin and she'll draw you something else. Art for this channel wouldn't even be possible, however, without the help of our patrons. Monetization on YouTube is not enough to keep us going, so please follow the Patreon link down in the description to help Tales of Atonement keep going long term. We have a lot left to do and a big story to tell, and we simply can't do it without your help. Besides, there's a ton of extras only available on Patreon that won't be available for months on YouTube, if ever. Some of our great patrons include Pammy Poo, Shadow Fox, Arya Gamari, Charles Tam, Jace Moreland, and Lunder Lumen. Thank you all for watching and supporting our story.